All right, well, it is 11:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here. Good morning. Welcome to our free webinar, Leverage Technology and AI. Today, we're diving into how smart tech solutions can ease the burden off your staff, boost capacity, and ultimately drive efficiency and profitability in your agency, even in today's challenging market. I'm thrilled to introduce our speaker, who is no stranger to all of us, Carey Wallace, who's the founder and consultant at Agency Focus. She has a wealth of experience in transforming agencies and operations through innovative technology, and she's here to walk us through real-world examples, complete with cost, usage, time estimates, everything to help you elevate agencies' performance. This session today is approved for 1 hour CE. Y'all know the drill. At the end of the presentation, a QR code will pop up, and you'll be able to scan it to complete a Google form and request that credit. But without further ado, please help me welcome Carey Wallace and take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here with you, and I'm looking forward to being with you in person in a couple months as well. So thanks for inviting me to come talk about one of my favorite topics. So I think it's no surprise to anyone that, in our given situation in this market that we're all facing, the agent of today has to be willing to marry both relationships, data, and technology in order to compete and really meet the needs and changing environment that we're in. Given the fact that we have a hard market, we've got carrier expectations, we've got staff expectations, the level of work with the amount of rewrites that we are all facing. There's a lot of agents that, used to think maybe I can ignore the technology and the number of insurtechs that are reaching out, but I don't believe that's the case anymore. I think if you want to compete and continue to have a staff that is efficient and well poised in order to meet the demands of your customers, of your carriers, and just of the changing marketplace, you have to be willing to look at the technology that you use, the data that you gleaned from that technology, and marry that with your relationships in order to be as competitive as possible. So I found this really interesting when I was at a conference, and another speaker actually shared the rate at which our society is adopting different technology or different platforms. So this right here is showing you the time that it took 100 million users worldwide to utilize some of the online platforms that exist today. So you'll see LinkedIn at the bottom, which has been in existence the longest of all of these, took 7 years and 11 months to get 100 million users worldwide. You go all the way to the top of that list, just one from the top is ChatGPT. It took 2 months for 100 million users to utilize ChatGPT. What this is talking about and demonstrating is no longer are things maybe going to move in one direction. It is moving very, very rapidly, and things are being adopted very quickly. So you can see as new things come out, it takes far less time for people to adopt it and utilize it. So I think that's true in our industry as well. It used to be years ago, there were a very small handful of people utilizing technology that sounded cutting edge, and the rate at which things are being adopted is far more quickly, even in our industry. This is how I view an independent insurance agency owner. They have to think about all these different decisions and how they want to run their agency. There's no one way to do it, but you've got to decide which customers are you going to go after? What's my staff going to look like? Which carriers do I want to align with? And then which software and tools do I want to use in order to make myself and my business run as efficiently as possible? So all these decisions really talk to how an agency runs. And the name of the game inside an agency today is how do we create capacity and efficiency and still be able to serve our clients and provide the quality advice that we once had. No longer are we doing it the way that it was done 16 years ago when I started in the industry, or certainly not 30 years ago when many of you may have started your career. So creating that capacity and efficiency, but still providing that unbelievable advice is incredibly important. So one of the ways that agents are meeting these needs to create capacity and efficiency, especially in this industry where we know that talent is leaving our industry faster than it's joining. A lot of people are thinking about, how can I redefine the team? While I know that this first topic that I'm going to talk about is neither AI or technology, it is something that a lot of agents are talking about, which is utilizing VAs. So rather than thinking about the only roles inside an agency as the owner, a producer, a service person, administrative people that run the operations, they're thinking about, how can I redesign the team and take slices of a role rather than the entire role, and have that be done by a lower cost offshore resource, or possibly be able to automate some of those resources in order to meet the needs of what is happening inside our hiring situation. So a lot of people talk about the amount of talent that's leaving the industry, and they focus on the agency owner. So the average agency owner age is 56 years old today. But what a lot of people do not talk about is the average age of a producer is 54. The average age of a CSR is 52. So talent in and of itself is, no question about it, one of the biggest concerns of our industry. How are we going to continue to recruit people into the industry? And how are we going to replace the knowledge of the people inside our industry as we recruit new people? I have a team that's pretty new, and we're trying to bridge that knowledge gap for the people who have been doing this for many years versus those that are just starting out. That is what our industry is facing pretty significantly. So in one of the ways that agents are dealing with this is thinking about what part of each job maybe can be can be you can put a process in place that's very predictable, and then utilize virtual assistants in order to do that work. It used to be, as an agency's book grew, the producer grows their book, and then you would add another CSR for every incremental growth in the volume of book of business. That would mean another hire of a CSR. This does not suggest that your hire would be that a VA hire would take the place of a full CSR, but a VA might take the place of a lot of work across all your service people in order to create efficiencies and also create capacity for those hard to find CSR or account manager roles. So this is an example of what hiring a VA can do inside of an agency from a financial perspective. We promise that we're not just going to talk about these things. We're going to show you the financial impact and some examples of what this means inside an agency. So let's say that there's an agency and they are at the point where they would need an additional CSR in order to keep up with the growth of the agency. That CSR hire could be somewhere around $43,680 $80 a year annual salary for a CSR. Don't shoot me. This is what the industry average is for a CSR. It could be more or less in your area. That same agency may consider looking at across all of the service work and saying, instead of hiring a CSR, I'm going to take all of the remarket work off of the current CSRs, and we're going to use that process, hire a virtual assistant that can follow the same exact process every time and get that remarket or get that packet ready for someone that can do that renewal work. Instead of costing them $43,000 a year, the virtual assistant will cost them somewhere around $15,000 a year, which is a difference of about $30,000. If that agency's value is somewhere between 7.5 and 9.5 times EBITDA, that savings of $30,000 would drop to the bottom line, and that could actually make a difference in the value of that agency increase by anywhere from $218,000 a year to $276,000 a year. It's a significant change in, number one, how you think about hiring and how you think about allocating work inside an agency, and think about this challenge. That revenue per employee number used to be every CSR had to handle X amount of work. Well, not if you start stratifying their job. You can actually put that high value work at the top, and they can handle more of the volume and take some of that administrative work, push it to someone who makes less money, create both efficiency and profitability inside the agency. So this is one of the ways that many agents are thinking about their teams differently. So that is not just, again, they're not using technology to do it. They're using another form of team, but it's someone that is not in their agency every single day. They're not sitting at a desk in their building. They work remote. They live in another country. They use it through a virtual assistant company. It's a very different way of doing things. When I first started talking about VAs about 6 years ago, I would go to an association and speak on this, and there might be 2 or 3 people that raise their hands. This past week, I was actually in Kansas. 2 weeks ago, I was in Kansas and had a conversation about VAs, and about 60% of the room raised their hands saying that they utilized VAs. They had done it at some point or were currently using VAs. It is definitely more widely spread than it ever has been. So let's talk about using technology or using AI. It's definitely a hot buzzword today, and there's a lot of different ways that technology and AI are being utilized. So this past year, I actually had a panel of agents that shared, number one, what is their current tech stack and how are they using AI inside their agency. So the first, and I'm going to show you exactly what it is. Some of them actually gave me a breakdown of what the savings was and how they're using it, but they shared, number one, all the technology that they're using, because from a financial standpoint, I want to make sure we balance your team cost, how much it costs for the humans that are working inside your agency, what does that technology cost, and is it turning out to an overall profitability for the agency? So in a typical agency, your people represent about 50 to 60% of your total revenue goes towards the human capital or the human resources inside your agency. That is shifting to, it could be closer to 45 to 50% is just your human capital. And there's more being spent on technology and AI and automation, allowing some profitability to grow. So I'm going to demonstrate a couple examples of that. The first agency owner that shared her tech stack, her name is Michelle O'Connor. She has an agency in North Carolina. And I've roughly a staff of about 8 employees at this point. So her you can see all of the technology that she utilizes inside her agency. And you can see there's a couple different, maybe there's some technology here that you've not heard of, but the ones that I want to point out is Gaia is one, where it's a super copy paste that allows you to map. If you are quoting, if you're quoting a coverage with multiple carriers, you could put it in once, and then you could literally go to multiple different carrier websites, and it will paste and put it in their forms exactly where it needs to be, creating a lot more efficiency. This is an alternative to using a rater. A rater would do that for you, but your carrier has to be listed in that rater for it to work. Michelle happens to be an Erie agent, so Erie doesn't participate with many raters, or any raters for that matter. So Gaia was a great option for her. This is a perfect way of creating efficiency using technology. It's a low-cost technology, high impact for an agency like hers. She also has ChatGPT listed there. In her team, ChatGPT was a way of training her staff and making sure that they all understood exactly what they needed to and could go to a closed chat GPT resource to look up certain things that have occurred inside her agency. What does this mean? How did you write a email to a client? How did you deliver a proposal to a client? So it can literally, she can train her closed chat GPT to talk in the tone and in the same way that her strong CSRs who have been there forever, and therefore her new people don't have to come up with it on their own. They're able to go to this closed chat GPT and have consistency across the agency. So there's a lot of different ways you can use AI. This for her in particular was a way for her to have a training and have a lot of different resources without one-to-one. Her team was able to go and use that as a resource. The last thing I'll point out is she uses Donna as part of her tech stack, which is a data analytics platform, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. There's a couple different agencies that use Donna, also has an AI component. So just look at her tech stack and just know this agency operates outside the benchmark of how much you would spend on technology, but her staff cost is actually lower than the benchmark. And this agency is able to operate around a 30% profitability because of the decisions she's made. And the way in which she's utilized technology, it created efficiency, has allowed her to minimize her cost from her people and operate profitably, which is pretty impressive. This is an example of ChatGPT being utilized for team collaboration and creating that closed ChatGPT for them to figure out how to answer in a consistent way and come up with information that's accurate. I'm not talking about what's out there and free to everyone, but they have trained their own chat GPT to feed it the information that they want their team to have. And it's secure, giving them accurate information to be able to respond consistently to their clients and also have a team repository of things that they've learned. So that is one. There's a couple different ways you can do chat GPT team. You could use Microsoft Copilot. You can use Google Gemini. All of these are platforms that are trying to do this exact same thing. So that's one example, low cost, high impact. So this is another example of how you're utilizing a tool in order to create consistent processes across your agency. So I just gave an example of an agency that decided to use a VA inside their agency. The only way that a VA is successful is if you have documented processes that are able to be done on a regular basis, the same exact way, use the exact same steps. But one of the challenges for agencies that want to utilize VAs is they don't have standardized processes. If you looked at their agency, everybody's doing things slightly different. So you could utilize a tool called Scribe or Tango AI that literally you take your person that is the most efficient at it or the one that follows the process that you want to be your standard, and they literally can use this tool to to take screenshots and actually narrate their process. So it's a daunting task to think about documenting every process inside your organization. But if you told a person all you need to do is work and it will record exactly what you do when you start and stop a process, Scribe or Tango AI will literally document that process, allow you to edit it, create a PDF, literally get the screen grab so they know exactly where to click, what information to put in there, and create a how-to guide for your process that is literally being done while you work. This is the best example I can give to you is I had an agency owner that had he had a team of 7. I'm sorry, he had a team of 9. And he ended up having 2 people that were key service people. One was diagnosed with cancer and she was going to be out for treatment for an extended period of time. And at the same time, someone else got pregnant, was a high risk pregnancy, and was going to be out. They did not have any processes in place. Both of those individuals were able to, in the matter of 2 days, use these tools and record what their processes were in the core body of work. So when they utilize VAs to help with fill the gap and create capacity on that team, they were able to do it in an accurate way and without having to sit for weeks and train that person. It was incredibly impactful and literally changed the way this agency is operated, even after both of those people are both doing very, very well. Were able to rejoin the team, but they were able to think about their team in a very different way. It was a terrible reason why they had to do it, but it turned out to be an incredibly powerful tool for them. And they were able to create capacity and be able to handle growth in a different way. So 2 tools that can help you document processes are Scribe and Tango AI if you've not used those. There's a lot of different tools. I'll be able to highlight a few of them, but it's impossible. It seems like, AI tools are popping up left and right, so it's impossible for me to tell you every single one, but I'm going to try and highlight as many as I possibly can. So this agency owner, this was also someone who was on my panel, and we asked every single one of them to say, tell me what you're doing today that is practical that we can share with other agents and what impact it's having inside your agency. So his name is Jack Wingate. He's a very tech forward agency owner. In fact, you may have heard him speak about his tech stack and how he utilizes technology inside his agency. They use ChatGPT to upload data from the carrier to find actionable data. Anytime you're uploading information that has identifiable information, it should be in a closed ChatGPT. Anything you put out in the free, you're releasing data out there and you could be liable for that. So please be careful and don't. Anything I'm talking about is in a closed ChatGPT format. He uses it for marketing. And so they basically took all of their best customer service reps and how they communicate, uploaded all of their messages in there, and then ChatGPT actually wrote the communication that was in their automated emails that go out based on their system. So if inside his agency, if one of his clients has under a 15% rate increase, there's automated messages that are sent out that sound just like the CSR because ChatGPT is utilizing the data that they put in there. So it doesn't sound automated anymore. It sounds like it's coming from the person they know, like, and trust. They also use Microsoft Copilot. They use that in order to tell Copilot what formulas they want to create inside their Excel format. He jokingly says that he's Excel illiterate, but Copilot has allowed him to utilize information inside Excel by just talking to it and saying, can you please find the, common denominator of this information, or can you please find me the average of this information without having to know what those formulas are? Copilot can do that for him. And they can put the body of data into their Excel format, type in what they want it to do without knowing it, and it can spit out the information that they want for him to analyze his own data. So this particular agency said for email responses, streamlining processes, generating website content, creating scripts for his video, form questions were defined, review the responses, creating blog articles, press releases, social media content, as well as that automated content. He basically estimated on his staff how many hours a month AI saved them, and it basically equaled 80 hours a month or 1.5 people since they've started utilizing ChatGPT and they use a couple different tools, but mostly their closed ChatGPT. And so basically he's tracking it. He knows that he can run leaner and save time but based on utilizing these tools. And if you follow Jack Wingate, who his agency name is All Choice, they have an unbelievable online presence that does not sound like AI. So remember, take it with a grain of salt. It's not, you put it in and you don't edit it at all, but you don't have to generate the ideas. You can basically say, write me a blog article about this topic, and it will do it. You now are just editing that rather than trying to sit there, stare at a blank screen and come up with the information. There are some agents that are actually taking this a step further, and there are automated, um, you know, I don't know what they're called, like avatars of themselves saying things. They're creating videos and it's not them. It's actually something that looks a lot like them and delivering that information in video form as well. So this technology is not slowing down, it's speeding up. And the acceptance upon which this information is, it used to be AI was very much, you could tell it was AI. It was poorly done, but people are getting smarter. They're using closed chat GPT where it sounds like them. They're feeding it information that sounds like their tone, their voice, their them in general, or their entire team, and therefore it's becoming incredibly powerful. These are examples of some common AI tools that were suggested if you wanted to start a business. These are all the different things that you can utilize or think about utilizing. Grammarly is one that I use on a regular basis. We publish valuation reports, benchmarking reports, compensation studies, all of those. I use Grammarly because it's incredibly hard to find your own errors in something, but Grammarly not only goes through and finds your edits, but you can also say, make this sound softer, make this sound persuasive, make this, if you have a tendency to write in a very direct way and it's something that needs to be softened, this is a tool that can help you do that. So it's really interesting how you can get your point across, but you can have suggestions made significantly better and way more impactful that may not come innate to you. I'm a very direct person, so Grammarly is my friend. But there's lots of different ways to make this happen. This next one is one of my favorites. I spend a ton of time on video conferences with my clients. It used to be prior to COVID, many of my client meetings were face to face, but that became impossible in COVID and my company grew. So now I'm spending a lot of time on Zoom calls with my clients where we're reviewing information together, we're talking, and it used to be I would be half listening, trying to take feverish notes about what was happening. Well, there's tons of tools out there that can record your meetings and tell you the tone of the meeting, what the reactions of people were, and be able to really think about the distribution. So not only is it documenting what happens, it's giving me a copy of the notes. It can give the other participants in the call copies of notes. But the biggest thing is it can be put in my agency management system. For us, that's HubSpot. So anyone who's dealing with this client now understands what's happened inside that call and can pick up where we've left off rather than not knowing the history for this agency. So it is incredibly powerful to start capturing this. And if you have an AI tool that can sit over it and listen to your voice over IP calls, monitor your emails that are going through. Now it's your meeting notes. You can get a sense for, is this a happy client? Is this a client that might be at risk? Is there something that we should be doing differently? It really can give you a perspective that you're never going to get if you have a pencil and paper and trying to take notes, which you're probably missing the point of that meeting as well. So there's some really easy tools out there. If you use Zoom, this feature is actually built into Zoom where you can actually you don't need to use an outside AI tool. It's literally built into the functionality of Zoom and incredibly powerful. So let's talk about some of the AI tools that are embedded in some of the technology. I mentioned Donna earlier. Here is an agency owner. Her name is Beth De La Forest. She's in Wisconsin. And this is, again, she was one of the people who were on my panel that talked about how they're using technology differently inside their agency. So number one, I will tell you that Beth they use Slack and Teams, but in her Slack channel, there's an AI function that the only thing that they're doing is questions about clients and coverage. And there is an AI function to that in a closed chat GPT for her team as well. So she's doing the same thing that Michelle is doing, and it's an ongoing training tool for their team to have a resource. But she also uses Donna, and I want to focus on Donna, which is it's a tool that sits and connects with several of the known AMSs and agency Zoom. So she uses, let's see, I don't see it on here, but she uses agency Zoom and she uses Donna. So for Donna, they actually can give their clients a centimeter score. And this is basically saying, it's listening to all of her phone calls that are over voice over IP, which sit inside her agency management system. It's looking at the frequency that the agency or that their client is calling in, the frequency that they are late pay or that they had a claim, or any kind of communication inside that agency management system. It is evaluating it for positive words and negative words and saying, is this a happy client or is this at risk? And each person inside her agency gets a centimeter score for their clients when they come in the morning. So imagine if your CSRs were being bonused based on their retention of your clients, and they had a tool like this that could say, before you do anything, this client is at risk based on what happened yesterday or what happened last week or what happened over the last 3 weeks. We think that this client has a low centimeter score, which means they are unhappy with the agency and we should probably reach out to them. That CSR is going to be far more likely to have a high retention rate than someone who doesn't have this and is treating every single client in their book of business exactly the same. That kind of insight is the power of technology. Now, I can't see your faces, but someone is thinking to themselves, well, what if they got it wrong? Like, what if the centimeter or the AI tool that's monitoring this data got it wrong? The person who's working on that client can tell the centimeter score, can help train it and say, hey, listen, that email, even though they said the word bad, what they meant was something good, and they can give it a thumbs up instead of a thumbs down, that the AI tool may have misread it. And over time, it can start to learn that behavior inside your book of business. So it's not just a all or nothing. There is a component to this where your staff is telling it whether or not it got it right or wrong. But the whole idea is most agencies do not have a score based on each customer to know if they're happy with the agency or not happy with the agency. And in this hard market, as rates are climbing and we're trying to, hold on to our book of business, having that kind of insight is unbelievably important. I'm going to share what one of these agencies' tech stack actually costs, but believe it or not, this tool, this insight is, I want to say, somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000 a year for this kind of tool that sits on top of your AMS system or agency Zoom. So it's pretty powerful, great insight. And again, it is looking at lots of different factors on a daily basis of what the sentiment is of your customer. The other thing that it can do is also make predictions across the book of business to say, based on this agent's or this client's coverage and makeup, we looked across your whole book of business and we can suggest that this policy holder might have these potential coverage you might suggest these coverages in order to cross-sell or upsell. So a lot of people look at monoline business and that's their cross-sell, upsell list. This takes it a step further to say other clients that look like this have these 5 coverages, you only have 2 of them, and it puts it in front of, again, a new employee that might not have that kind of depth of knowledge. Again, they might not all be right, but at least it's making predictions and saying these are potential ways that you can cross sell or upsell in this client, increasing your retention, but also increasing the number of policies per customer, which is one of those metrics that make it really difficult for a client to leave. So incredibly powerful tool. You can, again, if it's suggesting the wrong coverage over and over and over, you can tell it it's wrong and it'll get smarter and smarter and smarter with your book of business. It also has the ability to use external data, compare it to the information that you have inside your book of business. So for this particular client, they specialize in some classic cars, so like collectible cars. It could actually go to the external data and say, for this person, do they have any registrations for automobiles that we don't currently cover, and therefore ask the client about those autos that they might not already have coverage with. So again, it can allow you to have a much broader view and start using data that maybe you don't have insight into already. So think about being able to take this information. Not only can you predict if your customers are at risk of leaving, but you can also set some guidelines for how you reach out to your customers and what that workflow might look like. So for instance, you can say, if this client has a centimeter score that's low and they're likely to renew because their renewal amount is coming in under a certain percentage, they get an automated message. If they have a centimeter score that is questionable, that maybe it's still on the high side, but it's not as high as the last one we did, and there's a potential upside opportunity, we're going to create a lead in the CRM and we're going to put that in front of your CSR or your account manager to handle. If there's a low centimeter score, we're going to really make sure that that goes to the top of the list and say, hey, this client needs some attention. There's potentially a different account change. There's something that has to change with this client to make sure we keep track of it. So for an agency, this actually is a Tennessee agency that provided this kind of structure, and what the impact was to their agency after implementing Donna and using it in this predictive of a way. They said that over the first year of use, they were able to see a 20% increase in their customer experience benchmark. That is their centimeter score when they started versus after a year of using it and being responsive to it. They actually had a 3.5% increase in their policies per customer across their entire book of business, which means that's actually a massive, massive change. And it's a huge indicator in evaluation, because the more policies per customer you have, the less likely those customers are to move on, making your retention rates higher and your book less risky. And there was a 5% increase in retention over the last 6 months. So their results were able to be measured by putting this in place. What you can't say is like, what is the response by their staff and how their bonuses were. I asked for that and they were like, oh, that's a great thing. I probably need to monitor that as well. But what's the success rate of the cross-sell upside with this tool versus without it would be a great metric to pay attention to. So again, that's just the difference of using some data and some technology married with relationships to see what impact you can have inside an agency. So as promised, this agency shared with us exactly what their tech stack was. So they use HawkSoft, Donna, Agency Zoom, Zapier, Bridge, and Slack as their tools, their main core tools. And again, I'm not proposing that this is the only tech stack that you should think of. This just happens to be the example of an agency that was willing to share with us what what they were using. What's interesting is you would think some of this technology would put them outside the benchmark, but for a best practices agency, they say technology should make up anywhere between 3 and 4% of your total revenue. In this agency, it actually only made up 2% of their total agency revenue, and they were able to have a smaller staff and manage a book in a different way. So if you use technology in a very, if you have technology, number one, fantastic. But if you're not using it in a way that creates efficiency, it just becomes an expense for you. In this particular case, this agency is really fully utilizing their technology, and it's creating capacity on their staff. Therefore, their team doesn't have to add a CSR every single time. They also utilize VAs. So this agency is definitely operating in the high 30. I think they were at a 38% profitability, if I'm not mistaken. They might have even been pushing 40. So again, it can be very, very impactful for agencies that use this kind of technology married with what your staffing costs are becomes really, really important. So we've talked about VAs, we've talked about technology, and some things that are normally innate in some of the tools that we're utilizing. There are some agencies that are going beyond that. They're taking some of the tasks that would be handled by humans and they're automating them. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of agencies that are using bots, or they've automated. Instead of using virtual assistants, they've taken those processes that are very predictable and they are automating them, where they're literally creating a bot that does the keystrokes, does all of the work that a human being once did is now being done by a bot. I caution to say they are not replacing people. They are replacing tasks that people did, allowing those people to now do the things that bots can't do. So a bot can't advise, a bot isn't licensed, a bot, that's questionable. There are people saying that bots can get licensed, but at this point, bots are not licensed. So it's really about creating capacity and doing the things that can be done by some other means and allowing human beings to be able to serve clients, build relationships, engage in a different way. So here's a couple examples of those agencies that are utilizing bots. The first one is Jeff Roy out of Canada, Rob Bowen, a small agency in New York. We've got Angela Trimble, she is in the middle of Kansas, and I have Mike Fusco, who's in California. Very wide variety in sizes of agency, but all of them are using some form of a bot in order to automate processes that were formerly done by human beings. So in his case, Rob Bowen is using Adapt API in order to literally log in every single day, go to all of his carriers and do the same exact thing every single day, where they go and they get all of the carrier downloads. It is then put in an Excel spreadsheet that is uploaded into his AMS and creates the tasks that his staff needs to pay attention to every single day. This was done by one person inside Rob's agency every single morning. It took her an hour and a half every single morning. That now is done automatically with Adapt API, who's doing it. And it's getting better and faster and quicker every single year. But he was one of the early adopters of this. Adapt API has this product, which I believe is off the shelf. It's not customized. Some of the other ones are customized bots that you have to maintain. But again, this is a low cost, high impact for an agency of his size that didn't have a lot of human capital. Therefore, it allowed him to be able to get this kind of report. It's in a format that could be easily uploaded and create the suspenses that needed to be handled inside his agency management system. And saved a fair amount of time. He didn't give me the estimated time, but I didn't ask him for it when I did that. The other ones who were on a panel were required to give me some time. I'll show you another example, which is swivel entries or repetitive tasks. So if you think about having two systems that you have to enter it into your agency management system, and then maybe also enter it into agency Zoom in order to make something happen, that's what we call a swivel entry, or things that have to happen on a regular basis. So Mike Fusco is the example for this. He uses repetitive process automation, which are bots. He has 4 bots. He shared with us that they were $2,000 each to create these bots and $1,700 a month in order to maintain them, a total annual cost of $28,400 a year. The human resource savings were 6,500 hours per year, which equaled about 3.25 people or $227,000 a year. So the difference for this agency was roughly $200,000 of their salary. I don't want you to think that he went and fired 3.5 people. He actually had people that were getting ready to leave, and he was stressed about how am I going to replace these people? And he started utilizing bots. He has 4 different bots that focus on 4 different functions, and they are repetitive processes inside his agency. One of which is the cancel non-pays, how they follow up with all of their cancel non-pays. Some is how they set up a new account inside their agency management system every time they sell a new customer or have a new policy. So it can be a very small process all the way to a large process. And the way he went about this was, what are you doing every single day, multiple times a day, that is following the exact same process, and how do we take that off of the human being's plate and put it onto a different process, and therefore give them more capacity that they could fill the gap of the loss of the people, rather than having to hire. And he happens to be in California, so hiring was very, very difficult. And he's been utilizing these, I think, for about 4 or 5 years. I have a podcast, literally, he goes through all 4 of his bots that you can tune in and listen to. I'm happy to follow up with if you want to know more about using RPA, but he's a great example of someone who's utilized it, and it's grown and shifted with his agency's needs. Angela Trimble is an agency. She utilizes, I want to say, Applied Epic, and they basically use their bot in order to identify policies that are coming up for renewal. They find the last year's policy, compare it to the policy information, and store all the information, and then navigate to the customer activities to store that information as well, and create that renewal information. They compare the two and decide, is this something that can be automated? Is this something that needs human interaction? And it creates the activity based on the metrics they put in place. So it's doing a comparison for her and allowing it to be less work, especially as we have a lot of renewal and rewrite work happening. So for her, it repurposed about 150 hours a month. So those people could spend their time talking to clients, not processing the information in order to get to that conversation. It's doing a lot of that prep work. If you remember earlier in this presentation, I was suggesting that a VA could do that prep work. In her case, she used a bot to do her prep work. And here's the other thing I'll tell you. If you're thinking to yourself, well, that only works in certain cases. Even if it automates 89% of the work and the person still has to only do 11% of the work because it doesn't fit into the process, you've still reduced the amount of time and created efficiency inside your agency. So the last one I'm going to talk to you is Jeff Roy, who uses Quandary. And for him, it was about daily reconciliation, doing the downloads, reconciling what's in the agency management system versus what's in the download, and coming up with those things that do not correlate and need to be focused on by the person. Well, what was happening inside his agency is a human being was doing all of that reconciliation work. At this point now, the bot is doing the reconciliation, and if it matches, great. If it doesn't match, the human is only looking at those things that don't match and then researching the things that needs the human reasoning in order to go research why it doesn't reconcile and what we need to do to figure out which is correct or what needs to be corrected inside the agency management system. So for them, it was about saving about $32,000 a year or 1,800 hours per year of work in that morning download process. So basically, Rob Bowen and Quandary, same idea, different exact practical application of it, but they're both focusing on that information that's either being downloaded. In Rob's case, they had to go to the carrier and get it because it wasn't part of the download, but both are talking about how do I make sure that the information in my agency management system is accurate and it is kept up to date without human beings doing that work. Here's the current list that I have right now of all of the organizations that provide repetitive automation RPA technology to the industry. I'm sure this list is ever changing, but we talked about Quandary, we talked about Adapt API. Alleviant actually works with Donna. So if you have Donna or you have that is an option for you. The last thing that I want to talk about with predictive is if anybody's like me and they're near their phone, they're on social media, and they mention something, the next thing you know, you open Facebook or Instagram, and the next thing you know, an ad for whatever you were talking about shows up in your feed, right? Well, it's almost like somebody's listening or paying attention and being predictive about what you want or what you might be thinking about. There's no reason in the world that our industry should not be using some kind of technology like that as well to say, wouldn't it be nice to know when my current customers are searching online for insurance or anybody in that household is looking for any type of insurance? Neon Alerts is doing exactly that. You can load in your current customers, your prospects, and if they have an email address and the name of the client, it can track over a lot of different search engines exactly when they are online searching for life insurance, car insurance, home insurance, other keywords that would suggest that they are in the market for insurance, which could be used as a retention tool. For a prospect, it could be used as a hot lead and move them to the top of the list of someone you could reach out to. So I know that sounds a little crazy, but that technology is here. And the reality is, if you're not using it, you are competing against clients or against agencies that are using it. So there's a definite urgency that can be created that allows you to be where your clients are when they are there and allows you to be responsive to them in a significant way. All of these technologies and all of these resources and tools and approaches, they're all focused on how do you create capacity, create profitability, and help you run your agency better and get the people that have the knowledge to provide advice focused on those activities and not on the activities that aren't adding value to that relationship. If you can move any administrative work into an automated process, it just allows you to serve your clients in a that much better way and solves one of the biggest challenges. It's literally one of the number one or number two challenges of our industry is finding and keeping great talent. If you're able to satisfy some of those resources by utilizing technology, it means we have to hire less people, but we have to hire higher quality people in order to get them to serve our clients the way that we want to and continue to operate our agencies the way we need to into the future. So hopefully this gave you some ideas of the things that you need to be thinking about. All of these are some of the byproducts of the things that I highlighted today is they've improved the customer service. They've made a change on the level of efficiency inside the agency. Some of them are providing product recommendations, both through a closed chat GPT or whether it be inside Donna, where they're looking at your book of business and making suggestions for cross-sell, upsell. They are segmenting audiences based on their behavior and different criteria. So you know how to respond to each of those types of customers inside your agency. They're analyzing customer satisfaction to make sure that you can hang on to your customers as long as you possibly can. One of the other things is other ways that AI is being utilized is to identify fraud. In a claim situation, there's lots and lots and lots of different ways. I'm just trying to highlight a couple of the ways that agents have shared with me how they're using it and the impact that it's made on their agency from a financial standpoint. So the other thing I'll tell you is if you go to best practices and you look at the retention rates, the new business rates, the revenue per employee, the cost per customer, all those metrics as we add technology to the mix and AI are changing. And those that are outperforming are going to be the ones that are driving profitability and, in essence, the value inside their agency. And those that aren't will have a tough time keeping up because that model of, you know, only a human being that is sitting in your agency is the way to handle this won't be able to compete at the same rate from a profitability and efficiency standpoint. So that is what I have for you today. I want to make sure, honestly, I used to say this was the agent of the future. It is definitely the agent of today. I'm not saying that every agency is using all the things that we're talking about, but that room is getting more and more crowded with the people utilizing these types of resources. And I don't think it's going to slow down. I think it's going to do nothing but continue to accelerate. Hopefully you got great stuff out of this. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.